Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, this is not a discussion on Justice League. This is a spoiler-filled, however, rebuttal to those fans out there who are making false allegations about Zack Snyder and this Justice League movie. And so that is why I have to do this video today. It's only part of several other spoiler-filled videos. So if you don't want the movie spoiled for you because you haven't seen it yet, do not watch. Do not watch this video. You are duly warned. One more time, do not watch this video. Before I go into that, of course, I must go with a passage of scripture. Psalms 34, verse 20 to 22 says, "The Lord keeps all the bones of the righteous. Not one of them is broken. Evil shall slay the wicked." Notice, the wicked is slain by his own evil. "And they that hate the righteous shall be desolate. The Lord redeemed the soul of his servants, and none of them that trust in him shall be desolate." I just want to say that first and foremost because I can see that there's a lot of adversity towards a film that bears so much it has for us today concerning heroes. Heroes are not just people who are extraordinarily gifted or do extraordinary acts. A heroic act can be just a smile to someone that lightens up their day. You can be heroes, even if it's just for one day. But we'll get into that in more detail as we get into the spoiler-filled discussion on Sunday about Justice League. But I will start to spoil the movie as the week goes along because I think even if I spoil the movie, I think it's so good that even if you spoil it, it's beautiful to people still. And sometimes people just need to have a better awareness of what they're seeing to appreciate it more. So I will spoil the movie bit by bit as the week goes along. Alright, in front of you are clips you're going to see repeatedly from the set of Justice League when Zack Snyder was directing the film. The film had not been wrapped up as yet. So right here you're seeing Wonder Woman battling Aquaman. And spoilers begin now. So first of all, Aquaman referenced a scene about the Atlanteans fighting the Amazonians many years ago when he had the lasso of truth. He was sitting on the lasso of truth. And he was doing that as he's paying a compliment to Diana, who is Wonder Woman. So I thought that this little fight scene here of an Amazon versus Atlantean is very fitting, and maybe will set up in the future for a war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman. Definitely either in Flashpoint Paradox or in something else. We'll see. Alright? But here, on the set of Justice League, I'm going to give you evidence that the Superman you saw by Henry Cavill was Zack Snyder's vision, Zack Snyder's Superman, because I hear a number of people talking about a guy in FX who's still working on the FX of Superman and other things there, saying that Joss Whedon did extensive, it's really Joss Whedon's Superman because Joss Whedon did extensive reshoots on Henry Cavill's character. And I want to show you a couple things facts that point to otherwise. Even if Joss Whedon did reshoots like he did with Cyborg, he did some reshoots with Cyborg, they were minor reshoots, meaning that the actual content that Superman they were going for with Superman was there. It's just Joss Whedon was tweaking it. Maybe some just how Superman may express things. Maybe Zack Snyder had Superman looking a little too serious, a little too almost evil. Alright? So Joss Whedon tweaked it. And maybe tweaked the dialogue in that some things that Zack might have said. So he tweaked what Zack was already going for. Maybe that happened. But to tell me that this is not Zack Snyder's Superman is blasphemy. And I will show you why. So first of all, right here in front of you, repeated over and over, you're seeing Aquaman facing Wonder Woman. But if you recall the movie, this is the time when they are at the memorial site of Superman. And all of the Justice League members are standing there watching at Superman who has just been resurrected. So the idea of Superman being resurrected was Zack Snyder's idea. And it had been his idea all along. And how do I know that? The evidence is here is the Justice League standing at the memorial site in a line. We've seen this in the trailers. We've seen this extensively. And in behind-the-scenes shooting, principal photography, Zack Snyder stuff, there they are. Okay? Secondly, just for those of you who watched the movie, if you look at Henry Cavill's face throughout that scene where Superman comes back and he lands and all of that, you will notice that his face, especially in his mouth area, because we know that they CG'd out the mustache, it looks like his face. It's not CG'd at all. But there are certain scenes where Superman talks where we can clearly see it's CG, and we know Joss Whedon did some reshoots there. But let's just continue on here. So here in principal photography, there's Henry Cavill shirtless. Do you guys remember that? And the Flash clunging in the background? Remember that stuff? So this is Zack Snyder's Superman. Okay? For anybody disputing if this was Zack Snyder's vision for Superman, it is. Now, what I will tell you is, clearly, they cut out a lot of the scenes of the action between Superman and the Justice League. That clearly is true. You know, we knew that a tank was thrown. We know that a number of other things happened. And there is a guy who gave some of the deleted scenes from Justice League. And a lot of people have been talking about the deleted scenes in Justice League. There's a lot of them. But that's because they're cutting it down so that they can keep the narrative streamlined. That's all. It didn't really serve a tremendous purpose other than that. It would be nice to have seen some more of the action scenes. And there are a lot of action scenes, including when Justice League was under the tunnel in the underground place between Gotham and Metropolis. Those underground tunnels where there was extended action sequences and scenes, but they had to cut it out for time. Now, that doesn't make the movie any less good. It's just that they're trying to keep streamlined. Joss Whedon, mostly what I noticed was post-production work by Joss Whedon, meaning he tweaked the color modes. He tweaked the color modes. Danny Elfman put in the fill-in tracks, so he had to fill in orchestral soundtracks in between songs and stuff like that. Still using Hans Zimmer's themes, still using Junkie XL's themes, but smatter here, smatter there. He did use a sizable amount of Richard Donner's Superman themes inside of the movie, and he used a lot of string work. And at certain points in the movie, it was very, very effective. On other places, it felt a little campy, and that's okay. It's okay because you're appealing to a wider audience. So let's just keep it moving. So there's Henry Cavill shirtless. So yes, and then he's showing that he's fighting in there, and Flash is going by him. And if you do remember, and even though Flash is clowning here, if you do remember, this was part of the scene where Superman was fighting all of the Justice League, and the Flash was trying to outspeed him, and he realized Superman's quite fast. He's not equally as fast as the Flash. He's a little slower than the Flash, but still at the same time, he can match the Flash for speed. You know, the Flash was surprised by that, so I thought that was really cool. Now, for those people who are arguing, Superman, he was supposed to come back with a black suit. He should come back with a black... You should have known. Look at the wrapping and the principal photography. Superman's not in a black suit. It was all there. So those of you who are disappointed because Superman didn't come back in a black suit, well, guess what? In principal photography, that was Zack Snyder's vision anyway. He wasn't coming back in a black suit. Okay? Now, while there was some more elaborations on Superman because he lost his mind, he needed to get back focused, and remember in BVS they said Lewis is the key, you know, and Batman got the idea, and that's when he talked about bringing out the big gun. All right, and all this is spoiler. Even so, there's a little bit more elaboration to Superman. If you go and read the article by a certain guy, one of my subscribers gave me the article, there's a little bit more detail there, right? And we know Zack shot principal photography of Superman at the Kent farm with Lois Lane. We've seen it in trailers. So Joss Whedon, he sort of possibly also rerouted how Superman's face looked. So he wanted Henry Cavill to come back, not have Henry Cavill so distressed, because Superman may have had a more distressed face and so dark. So because Superman seemed to have turned dark a bit, and he was a little bit crazy. And from the extended the extended stuff, that the reshoots would kind of bring it down and resolve Superman so that he started kind of caught himself faster. Okay? And that's basically it. It's Zack Snyder's Superman still. Okay? All of that's Zack Snyder, but it's just that Joss Whedon did some reshoots. You can see somewhere where in between those reshoots that Joss Whedon did, he spliced in what Zack had. So sometimes you see Superman's face looking like normal. You know, Henry Cavill's face looking normal. There's no edit. And then next minute you see it edited. And he's saying certain things. And yes, the editing was a little bit jarry. It's like an uncanny valley. But if you're groped into the story, it doesn't really matter too much. And those people who didn't know it was CG'd in, they wouldn't have noticed it at all. Even though their minds might have picked up something. Alright? Let's keep it moving. Here, this is again principal photography. The joke between Batman and Aquaman. That scene where they are in, I believe they're in the Flying Fox heading towards, or no, they are underneath Batman's underground cave, and he's talking to Aquaman about, putting out a feeler for his underground sea creatures so they could help them in the battle against Steppenwolf, right? And Aquaman's explaining, well, you have to catch them downstream first of all, and if there's any water, I could do it, But they never really had any water; they were on land, so it didn't really matter. But the point is that jokey scene, that was all a Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder made that joke. So if you thought that was Joss Whedon, nope. And the hint behind that is that, and we see it in the principal photography. Here it is in the little mashup where Zack Snyder's directing this, and I'm going to give you the links. Go look in the links down in the comment section below. I'll leave them in the comment section. I'll leave links to the Justice League behind the scenes footage so you can look at it and see how much this is a Zack Snyder film. The post-production editing, Joss Whedon did. I think his role was much more in that. And Zack Snyder, as many people said, did 2/3 of the post-production editing, so it was just for Joss Whedon to complete. I also wanted to say that, well, let's just keep it moving. So when Bruce Wayne was talking to the Aquaman, when Batman was talking to the Aquaman, that scene where Bruce is walking with the Aquaman and talking, that's actually an alternate scene that Zack actually shot, that Joss Whedon thought was better. And so he went with that scene over the Zack Snyder scene. However, Joss Whedon was involved in parts of that scene where when you get the close-up shot of Aquaman in the water talking to Batman and he throws himself back to swim away, those two close-up shots, Joss Whedon did them. And you can tell the difference because it doesn't feel like it's an on-site scene, but it actually feels like it's on a set. You get that fake background behind Aquaman. So you could tell he was on a set there. So the cuts, if you look, you will see where Joss Whedon actually did the work and where's Zack Snyder. Because you can tell those two people are outdoors walking. They're walking with each other. And if it's outdoors, then it ain't Joss Whedon that did that shot. Okay? Because that means they were up in Iceland area doing that shot. Okay? The close-ups of Bruce Wayne looking at Aquaman's, again, alternate cuts that Zack Snyder did that Joss Whedon decided, well, this cut's more better. The scene with Cyborg inside of the tank when the wall crawler or the night crawler, that upside down shot you saw in the film is an alternate cut, I believe, of the shot, and he wanted that more than the robotic cyborg talking that you saw in the trailers. Okay? So there's things called alternate cuts as well, and Zack Snyder seems to do many cuts of a thing, and Joss Whedon went through the different cuts to decide what he wanted to portray, to get more character out of the characters. Okay? So all of these things Joss Whedon was doing. Now, he got credit for script writing because Joss Whedon, though he didn't do a whole lot of script writing, he tweaked a little bit of Chris Terrio's lines, or let the actors go ahead and say things, but when they said things, he wanted them to interpret it this way. Okay? So not necessarily Joss Whedon rewrote anything. It may be that he let the actors, he said, okay, now this specifically I want you to do. I want you to say it this way and go along these lines. So that's also another way of script writing in a way, because you're giving a different interpretation so you can get the actual feeling of the actors out there. Now, a part that I think Joss Whedon may have done was when they were all together in Batman's lair and Batman talked about Steve Trevor to Diana. That Steve Trevor moment may have been a Joss Whedon moment, actually. Okay? Now, most people think that Joss Whedon's moment with the Flash when he tripped and he fell on top of Wonder Woman and then he moved off and he kind of looked away, that was chauvinistic. Actually, I don't think it was chauvinistic. I thought, my impression was that the Flash, he was reveling in falling on top of Wonder Woman. He didn't revel in falling on top of Wonder Woman. It was actually a very funny moment because the Flash is so sometimes awkward and clumsy. And I now understand why the Flash's uniform is what it is. That dude, at that high speed, you collide with something, you could rip up limbs, you could break limbs. So it had to be of a material that was elastic enough to handle that. And if you crash, because remember, if he crashes, it's instantaneous death. Okay? So he needs a suit that can absorb that punishment in a very short space of time. and still keep his structural integrity, his bones, his organs, all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And remember, his organs are going to slam against them. But being in the Speed Force kind of helps protect him. So even if he comes out the Speed Force and he slams into something, it seems as though he's still able to live and exist. But it's still crazy. Yes, so let's go into... So all of this was shot by Zack Snyder, okay? And here again, Zack Snyder again is responsible for all of this. You can see this is part of principal photography where he was talking. So I'm just showing you the evidence that this was all shot. Most of what Aquaman was talking to Bruce Wayne or Batman up in Iceland was Zack's, okay? Now you guys were moping, some people were moping about the trailers, okay? The trailers for the film. Oh, what was in the trailers didn't show up in the film. Barry Allen, he was pointing and breaking through a glass. And if you did look carefully, I told you there was a collision between a car and a truck. Remember, you guys? I was hinting to you guys to that. And it really turned out to be so. But when I saw what they cut, they seem to have cut this early from the film with the Iris West. People were saying that it was Joss Whedon that cut it. But I wouldn't be surprised Zack actually cut it out from the footage. And people got a note of that because it's not completed. It's still, when you look at the whole entire thing that was cut, it wasn't finished. And I think they realized that the Iris West, while that would be fun and it would really make the fans happy and excited, it could be probably put in a deleted scene like Etta Candy with Wonder Woman, when they show that they went, Etta Candy and her squad go to retrieve a mother box from Belgium, which is probably the artifact that the Vikings, the mankind had buried, which is talked about in Justice League and explained by Silas Stone to be retrieved back in 1901 and gave to the Americans. All right. That information, which, you know, you can add that as a deleted scene at the end of the movie. But I strongly believe this movie should stay as it is. Now, there's one more thing I want to say. Well, there's a couple things I want to say. But first of all, I'm not going into the concepts in this movie. I don't want to go into that. I will use that for the spoiler discussion. So much I want to say about heroes and if you're a Christian, how it points, even the music and the come together and all of this stuff. It's just, Zack Snyder is brilliant. Now, let me just say this, though. How Joss Whedon cut the film and how he edited the film, and even the ending parts of the film, and even some of the CGI that was put into the film, which I thought was beautiful. I loved the CGI, and I loved how Steppenwolf looked. I looked at it a couple times. This film had a lot of horror elements to it. I don't know if people realize that. So you're going to be on the edge of your seat because of that. A lot of horror elements, and that's typical of Zack Snyder again. But what I really liked, and like I said before, Danny Elfman took either it is the Junkie XL borrowed from Danny Elfman and Danny Elfman carried it back onto Junkie XL. I don't know, but there's a lot of Junkie XL moments also in this film. Either Junkie XL had a blueprint down and Danny Elfman took advantage of it, because Junkie XL stuff was still in the raw in terms of synth. And if you listen even to the background music of these background filming, the background scenes for filming, the behind the scenes footage, you may even hear some of Junkie XL's probably track there. And I thought that Danny Elfman was so brilliant in merging in all these different elements, including some of the music for Avengers was in this freaking movie. I mean, this is just crazy. And at the same time, he has a kind of a theme for Justice League floating in there. He pulled Junkie XL, he pulled Hans Zimmer. You know, he went all the way back to Man of Steel with Hans Zimmer. That touching dong 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 dong. You know, all that shit he put in there. Wonder Woman's theme was in there. I mean, oh my gosh, I could understand why Danny Elfman had a ball with this, because he's pulling gems from everywhere. I'm gonna have to look and see if he even pulled gems from Justice League the animated series, because I mean he was going ham on this shit. You know what I'm saying? But I'll say that Zack Snyder's, this is definitely a Zack Snyder movie. I don't think that Zack Snyder would have exactly done it in the order that it was done. And of course, Joss Whedon started off the movie with that little camcording, that little cell phone recording with the kids interviewing Superman at some site, some disaster. I got to look into that in a little bit more detail. But that was definitely a Joss Whedon clip. And clearly you could tell because of the CGI of Superman's mouth as well. But I loved this movie. I really did. And I'm tired. Oh, by the way, did you notice that the camera there is giving cancer awareness? Look at right there. Cancer awareness right there. I thought that's just so cool too. Zack Snyder's such a loving guy, and these guys are so passionate about what they do. But there's a lot of people that put in hard work people into this movie. And I have so much more to say and go into much more detail on it. But for now, I just wanted to start off by showing you these things. And I'm going to give you the behind the scenes footage, the two YouTube videos where you can look at more behind the scenes footage and see how much Zack shot. And when you think about the movie and you think about what Zack Snyder did in this movie, it's entirely Zack Snyder's movie almost. I mean, Joss Whedon came in there and he really, Joss Whedon, if you're listening, thank you. Thank you for not trying to overshadow Zack Snyder's vision. Now, you did some things that was very Whedon-ish, coming down to the end. I don't think Zack's that kind of weedy. But then again, it could be Zack. I don't know. I can't confirm it yet. But I loved it. I loved what they did with Superman. And the coming together of the Justice League was because of Superman. Come together right now. What? Over me. They literally came together because of Superman and for Superman and to revive Superman and all kinds of things. And Superman you could tell Superman's the leader of the Justice League. I mean, when he came on the scene, oh man. And that was Zack Snyder's vision. Now, did the story exactly end how Zack would have wanted it to end? Not exactly. I don't think exactly like how Zack would have done it. I think Zack would have put more effort into it. Much more. What I mean by more effort, I mean there would have been more detail into the ending, and he'd probably try to give it even a more heavier heartbeat push. But with the time constraints of 2 hours, and this movie being so entertaining and still having so much to say, even though the storyline is simple, it still says so much. It says volumes. I think it's good enough for me. I think though there'll be a plus by seeing behind the scenes footage of it. I still have to go back and see the movie a couple more times because there's some really deep concepts in there that Zack had that are more nuanced because Joss Whedon kind of left them to the side a little bit. So I would really like to go back and see the movie at least 2 more times. So I really would want to go see this movie at least a minimum of 5 times. Maybe I'll go see it more. But at the end of the day, it's not on a Batman v Superman level of story and plot, but yet it's got more in it than, say, definitely more than Suicide Squad. It has more in it, say, than... I think it has more in it than Man of Steel because it's tying up Man of Steel, BVS, and Wonder Woman. And I think it even has more in it than... Does it? Than Wonder Woman? Does it? Let me think about that. I think it and Wonder Woman have about the same amount of content. You could tell that Warner Brothers tried to go the Wonder Woman route with this film. In terms of emotional impact, in terms of social content. I think they still didn't get that impact they really were gunning for, where the Wonder Woman was shooting for it as well, but this film didn't do it quite like how Zack Snyder would. What Zack Snyder wanted to say is, you, the audience, has the power. You have the power to be a hero. That's what he was really going with this. It didn't quite land, but it's there, and I'm going to show you guys how powerful that is. And if you listen to the narration by Amy Adams, Lois Lane, talking about the heroes that remind us of who we are in the better parts of ourselves, I think it more or less does that. But really, they wanted to translate the power to you. Zack Snyder wanted you to feel empowered at the end of this movie. And some of you are going to be empowered and you want to go out there and do something. And some of you will not. This movie this was Zack Snyder's baby. This is what everything was leading up to. And Zack, I know he's going to feel very disappointed that he let you guys down in the sense that you still don't get what he was going for in this movie. Because Zack is not limited. Zack is a servant to the message. He's a servant to the message he was trying to give. And a lot of you are telling me that this is a forgettable film. That means you missed the message Zack was giving. And somehow you got locked up in Joss Whedon and you're thinking Whedon would do this. No, Whedon's a servant to Zack too, and he was trying to trim the movie down, streamline it, and crystallize Zack's message. And I think the average person, I think all of you have gotten the message, but it's just that it's subconscious. It's not cognitive yet. And I have to bring, now it's my job. It's my job to bring it cognitively to the fore for you guys so you can see it. No, this is an incredible movie. It's an incredible movie. I wouldn't say it's better than BVS. No, it's not better than BVS. But it's there with Wonder Woman. It's vying for the third spot. It's vying for the third spot, folks. I've seen this movie 3 times, and I can tell you this movie has a lot of stuff in it, and you will be shocked at how close it is. The thing about it is, though, these themes are explored, but they're not. They're explored metaphorically. Zack is a little bit more clearer. Sometimes he's a little bit more explicit in what he wants to say. And I'm sure if he had a chance to do this video, this movie, it'd more explicitly lead you guys into what he's saying. I think Joss Whedon, because he had to cut it a certain way, it kind of got nuanced instead of explicitly stated at certain points. But you know, that's just the way how it is. But I will get into it with you guys. This movie's a great movie, man. It's a great movie. It's solid. It's kind of like BVS. It's kind of like BVS in the sense that how do I explain it to you? That if you don't understand nuance, you're going to you will get a story. Don't worry, it's a nice smooth plot. You know, it's much more smoother than BVS theatrical cut, but there are deeper things going on in the story. Yes, it's a straightforward story. Zack said it. He said, "Oh, it's going to be a straightforward story." Jeremy Irons said it's going to be a much straightforward story. All right, Jeremy is proud of this, and Ben Affleck and everybody's proud of this movie because it's able to give these deeper, subtle things while staying relatively straightforward. So this movie is a lot deeper than you think. Those of you who are just kind of being dismissive of it, I don't know how many times you guys have seen this film, but I suggest you go and have a second look at it. And pre-prepared some of you to come on my channel. And if you want to engage me, even if you want to dispute with me about things, fine. But Sunday, we're going to have a spoiler-filled discussion of this movie. And particularly, I want to emphasize not on all the BS that people are talking about and all the rumors and stuff, but I want to talk about concepts that this movie brings forward. And we will spend some time talking about that because I think a lot of you have kind of missed the boat on some very important things. Now notice what this guy is doing here with Henry Cavill. Notice the guy in the background, what he's doing. Notice what this lady on the side is doing. They're all telling the characters the different kinds of movement and what to perceive different places. Okay? So another thing people really fail to understand is there's a bunch of people that worked on this movie. And when you spit because you have hate and vitriol for Joss Whedon, when you spit on these people, all these people that work, not just Zack Snyder, but all these people that did that work on this movie, okay? Just remember, you're hurting people, man. A lot of people pour their heart and soul out on a movie. It's not just the actors, not just Zack Snyder. It's all of these people in the background. All of these people in the background. This guy here, this guy here. And the thing is, you're doing it undeservedly, guys. Your criticisms are unfair. If there's more to the movie, why don't you just say, man, I can't wait to see what Zack's full vision for this movie is and lobby for that. And go and support the movie and go and watch it and enjoy it. Why do you have to be so bitter and stupid? That is the thing that gets me. You went and you watched all the clips and trailers, so you spoiled the movie. You spoiled the movie for yourself. You are to blame for that. And then you go into the cinema expecting more, and when you don't see more than what you've seen already because you spoiled the movie, Now you're sour. Now you want to pick a scapegoat. So it's Joss Whedon. He's public enemy number one and Warner Brothers. And let me guess, Marvel too, right? Hey, I guess somewhere Kevin Feige's laughing in the background. Oh yeah, I got them. You blame everyone but yourself. You're to blame. You're to blame. Every time you point a finger, 4 point back at you. Well, 3 actually. Your thumb doesn't point back at you. Your thumb points downward. I'm trying to say that stop it, DCEU fans. Stop it. There's no way you can argue this wasn't Zack Snyder's film. This was Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon and Warner Brothers edited a certain way. And you know that Japanese dude who's an executive? He's to blame. No, he's not. You're to blame. They did screenings. People enjoyed the screenings. But you went and spoiled the movie for yourself. You went looking at this. You probably watched spoilers. You probably even seen the movie, a pirated copy of the movie. And then now you come back because you expected Darkseid. Because you expected Superman to turn bad and be influenced by Darkseid. And oh, the dust coming off his thing. It doesn't match up with them zapping a mother box, and the mother box awakes and it awakes Superman. It doesn't match up. Get out of here with that nonsense. Everybody was telling you Superman is dead. The actors were telling you he's dead. Zack Snyder told you he was dead. Zack Snyder, if you go and watch his Collider video interview with BVS, he said there's a more definitive way to show that someone has risen from the dead. But that's not what exactly I did. But I gave them hope. In other words, what happens is, for those of you who don't know, and you haven't read comics, because a lot of y'all profess to be Snyder fans, and you profess to be DC fans, but you haven't read a single DC comic. Y'all haven't even read the Death and Return of Superman. So y'all don't even know what y'all talking about. But if you ever read the Death and Return of Superman, which I covered in a video, I told you guys Superman's dead. I told you he's not alive. Everybody's saying, oh, he was alive at the end of BVS. No, he's not. He's not alive. He wasn't alive. What you saw was his bioelectric field. And he psychically, what we call psychokinesis, he controls that bioelectric field. But when he died, that bioelectric field was still there because he was still charged in his body. So that at the end of the day, he actually was he was dead. Okay? And in Superman Returns they talk about the bioelectric aura. But dead people, the bioelectric aura is not controlled by dead people. You know what I'm saying? A bioelectric aura is controlled by living people. But he still had solar charge in him. So that's why the dust rose. And that just showed that he had a bioelectric aura in him. And it was supposed to cue people in that there's still hope that Superman would return. But everybody's saying, oh, Superman's guaranteed to return. They buried him in the ground. He's dead. Okay? We were wondering how he would return. And they gave a very credible way. Now, you guys, if you've read Superman, The Return of Superman, you know, there was a lot more to the story than just Superman. But the point is, the essence of it was that Superman was visited by the occultists, and the occultists is able to sort of reboot him a bit, and then he was revived eventually. In this case, this is much more realistic in that a mother box revived him, right? And we know mother boxes, for those of you who know, they heal and they also restore people. In fact, Darkseid was killed and he was restored back to life after Batman killed him. He was restored back to life by a mother box. So that's, and it was explained in the film that mother boxes could do that. And because Superman had the power of a planet, it revived him. And this was all Zack Snyder's plan. This was not Joss Whedon's plan. The part that may have been Joss Whedon's plan was in, I would think, how Steppenwolf, how the story ended with Steppenwolf. Not quite like, not the fear part, because that was all probably Zack's plan as well. And we all realize that Steppenwolf did not die. At the end of this movie, Steppenwolf is being attacked by parademons, and he's being sent back, I'm assuming, to Apocalypse or somewhere near Apocalypse, because he was exiled before that. But he's not dead. And there's so much I want to say, but I just had to shut up and just forget about it for now. But I'm trying to focus in that maybe that post-credit scene with Superman racing the Flash, and certain elements in the story, maybe with Superman going back and lifting up a building and carrying it where the Flash was there. Maybe that's not Zack's scene. Joss Whedon may have added that. There's extra flowers at the end of the movie where it just kind of everything just kind of turns into flowers, because they still have the mother boxes, right? I don't know if that's Joss Whedon again, because it feels a little bit like what we call Wicca. It feels like a Wicca kind of feel to it, and it feels a little bit like what we call the pagans, or the what are they called? Oh gosh, it doesn't come to me. It's pity, but it's a religious belief system, and it felt more like that. It almost felt a little bit like Tim Burton coming back to life a bit, very kind of weirdish, creepy-ish, really highly colorful, you know. Maybe it was Zack Snyder. You know, Zack Snyder does some weird stuff, but that there felt Whedonish. The ending, the soundtrack was straight out of, I think it's straight out of Superman, 1975. That whole musical score that he used instead of maybe something else. And, yeah. But the last post-credit scene, I don't think Zack would have done post-credit scenes to start with. But the last post-credit scene with Lex Luthor and Deathstroke, that felt like something that Zack Snyder was actually doing, because if you look at the storyboard that Zack Snyder was doing, you see Lex Luthor talking to Deathstroke. So I assume that was our original plan. It probably was going to be at the end of the movie. It wasn't going to be a post-credit scene, but Joss Whedon decided to add it as a post-credit scene to save time. So maybe Zack would have just had it at the end of the movie, kind of like with Lex Luthor and Batman at the end of Batman v Superman. He would have just had it there. So, like I said before, this seems to be more of a Zack Snyder movie. Joss Whedon moved things around a little bit. They had to shave off a lot of stuff, and so they shaved off a lot of stuff. A lot of these additional deleted scenes from the movie, while they would have been nice to have, like the Green Lantern scene with Steppenwolf and a number of other scenes that they talk about that were deleted out of the movie, while they would have been fantastic, they wouldn't have moved the story along. It would have been nice fan service, but it wouldn't have moved the story along. So Joss Whedon kind of cut off all the fat and kept the basic story, but he still kept Zack's vision, and he streamlined it. He did exactly what I suggested he should do. That's why I was so satisfied with this movie, because it was basically a Zack Snyder movie. The ending was a little bit dialed back a bit. I would think so. It was dialed back a bit, and it had to be truncated a bit. But in essence, it's still Zack Snyder's story. And all the essential parts that make Zack Snyder's film what it is were there. And so think of it as a slightly stripped back Zack Snyder film. That's what it was. And so I can't understand the outrage and the stupidity of some people. I mean, you're really behaving very picky and stupid, and you're behaving like the critics are behaving. I expect that from the critics. I expect it from detractors of the film. I don't expect it from fans of Zack Snyder who know this is a Zack Snyder film. You know this is a Zack Snyder film. You've seen all the footage of it. You cannot fault this film for not being a Zack Snyder film and saying that WB and Joss Whedon were trying to make a different film. I even hear some people stupidly say, well, Zack Snyder's films are deep and they're dark. And this film is not deep and dark, so this is not a Zack Snyder film. I'm like, dummy. Zack Snyder did Alza Gahul. Yeah, it was not deep. It was not dark. It was deep, but it wasn't dark. And its storyline was very simple. Okay? Very simple. Simpler than Justice League. Okay? It was a little longer than Justice League as well. Alright? But it's an adventure journey. And it wasn't dark. I mean, it had dark moments in it. And it was a serious film, like all Zack Snyder films. And this film, again, was a serious film. But it wasn't dark. And this movie is not dark, but it's serious. Okay? Another thing, the fact that this film is critically panned should tell you something. It should tell you that this is a Zack Snyder film. And the comments about it being messy and that it's a bore and it's loud, these are all comments we hear about Zack Snyder's films. So the fact that the critics know Zack Snyder did the majority of this film, and when they sit down they see that the majority of this film is Zack Snyder's blueprints on it, is why they are panning it. Because they don't like Zack Snyder. If this was a Joss Whedon film and they had changed the film into a Joss Whedon kind of Walt Disney kind of Marvel, tone it down, easy film that's not realistic at all, there's no tension in the film, guess what? They would have given it 99%, 98%. Because it's Joss Whedon on board, right? Joss Whedon's never gotten a film which the critics never liked. So you have to be crazy to think that this is not a Zack Snyder film and his vision didn't come to the screen. The fact that most of the critics hate it, a significant amount of critics liked it, okay? Even though it's like 37% of the critics or whatever, 33% or whatever it is right now, liked it. The fact is, those critics, they actually gave the film a fair assessment, all right? But the point is that most of the critics didn't like it because they just don't like Zack Snyder's films, period. And that means this is a Zack Snyder film, unapologetically. So for all of you stupid fans out there who have been bad-mouthing this film, you essentially been bad-mouthing a Zack Snyder film. And that's what makes you so stupid. You're stupidly bad-mouthing Zack Snyder's film, saying, oh, I want to see the home cut. Well, if this film flops hard, you ain't gonna see no home cut. You ain't gonna see no home cut, jackass. So it needs to succeed. It needs to succeed. You guys have a great one.